I was getting ready to start this video off saying this must be a slow news day in the basketball world, particularly about this particular topic I'm about to dabble into. But breaking news, Daryl Morey has stepped down in the front as far as running the front office for the Houston Rockets. I'm going to address that story. But before we get into that story, I first like to talk about this topic, the possibility of Russell Westbrook being traded straight up for Paul George. Russell Westbrook will be going to the Clippers. Paul George will be going to the Rockets. I just don't see this working for several factors. One, it's too early. The new season won't start until 2 months from now. And it's too early to make a decision or a move like this. Now, since Daryl Morey has stepped down, maybe they're maybe the Rockets are looking forward to the future. Maybe they're coming to the realization that, having James Harden and Russell Westbrook in the same backcourt is not going to elevate them as far as winning titles. So do we continue doing what we've been doing, or we just start the rebuilding process? And we're going to get into all that later on into this video. All right. So it's just too early to make such of a trade like that. Two, I can see it benefiting the Rockets from a competitive standpoint, because now you got Paul George, and I think Paul George's play style fits perfectly well for James Harden. You don't have two ISO players that the only time that they both need the ball. Okay, they have to have the ball. They have to have the possession of the ball the majority of the time. Paul George can pretty much feed and play off the ball. He doesn't necessarily need the ball. So I can see it fitting for the Rockets. Now for the Clippers, I mean, you already have Kawhi Leonard there, okay? That's, clutch shot Kawhi Leonard, okay? The one who hits the big bang shots, Kawhi Leonard. You have that individual there. So adding Russell Westbrook wouldn't help the Clippers that much, all right? And then essentially 3, you'll be pretty much starting all over again, all right? You have, basketball is a marathon. A basketball season is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you got to get familiar with everyone. Better chemistry means a very successful season. And they just got familiar with each other the last regular season, just a little too late for the Clippers. So, everybody's pretty much gelling and knowing one another's strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's going to build the camaraderie as well as the chemistry of the Clippers if they keep status quo. Now you're substituting Paul George, and now you're putting Russell Westbrook in the mix. You're essentially starting all over again. Okay? Well, in this time, instead of the roster trying to get use of 2 players like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard trying to, get their styles blended in with their styles, it takes time and it takes a process. Now you have to do that. You have to do that all over again with Russell Westbrook. And I just don't see from a competitive level how this makes the Clippers better. Okay. It's more, it puts them a peg down, if you ask me. Now, if you're talking about they still keep Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and get Russell Westbrook, okay, then that's a different dynamic, okay? That's something that I can see how, if it plays off perfectly, I can see how that can really contribute to the chance for the Clippers' chances as far as winning a title, having their own big 3, okay? But I just don't see it, them swapping Paul George for Russell Westbrook. Sorry about that. I had a brain fart there. Okay, so yeah, I just don't see how that is going to work. Now, in other basketball-related news, Daryl Morey stepped down from the Houston Rockets front office. Now, what does that mean overall? To me, if I had to take a shot in the dark, I feel like the Rockets are finally realizing something that I've been speaking to existence for the past couple of years. Okay. And the Rockets are a good enough team where they're going to have very great, successful regular seasons. But when it matters the most, they just don't have enough there to continue as far as elevating them to the NBA Finals. They're too good to look up and get a high-level draft pick, all right, in the draft. And they're always going to be cap strapped to the point to where they're not going to be able to add even more talent that they already have. All right. So two ways you can make your team very successful and possibly win a title is you have to have cap flexibility, but you also have to draft really well in order to build a franchise from your team from scratch. And the Rockets have neither nor, okay? They're really tight on the salary cap, and they traded and mortgaged away a lot of their future prospects, a lot of their future draft picks, so they can't even go that route. But I feel like ownership is probably coming to the realization that, look, this is not working. So let's try to trade Russell Westbrook and get some type of draft pieces for him, all right? And take it a notch further, midway probably to next season, regular when the new season start 2 months down the road, and they're closer to the trade deadline, they might, and depending on their record, they may go as far as trading James Harden for some pieces, for some picks, okay? And there's a market for James Harden, all right? There is I think there's a bigger market for James Harden than Russell Westbrook, okay? Now, the Heat may entertain a Russell Westbrook. He fits the same type of MO that Pat Riley likes in his players. But do the Heat have enough draft components or pieces that can interest the Rockets? James Harden possibly going to the 76ers for some draft pieces so they can start their own big three, or the possibility of him signing to a team out west. I feel like the Rockets are in rebuilding mode, okay? And the reason why they're in rebuilding mode is like I said earlier in this video, I mean, why continue to keep banging your head against the wall expecting a different result? Eventually, you're going to get dizzy and you're going to get a concussion, all right? So why even continue doing the same thing over and over and over, expecting a different result? They don't have enough pieces to beat the Clippers, to beat the Jazz, to beat the Suns, to beat the Lakers, okay? The Lakers and the Clippers are not going anywhere. Golden State, they're on the come up, okay? And fully healthy, we don't know what type of Golden State Warriors. We may get the old Golden State Warriors. That's a third team we got to deal with. Then you got these up-and-coming teams. You got the Jazz and the Suns. And I was a stern component on those two teams. I told you guys 2 years ago to look out for those teams. Then you got the Mavericks and the Grizzlies. They're on the They're on the up and coming. They're on the swing, okay? And you never know what the San Antonio Spurs are going to do. The Sacramento Kings, they fell off a little bit, but they're still a team that you have to reckon with, as well as the New Orleans Pelicans, another young team with a lot of pieces, a lot of young parts that are growing and maturing, and next year might be the year for them to really, put a foot in this conference, in the Western Conference, okay? So you got all these teams are on the rise. You may have a couple of teams in neutral mode, okay? You don't know if they're going to go up or down like San Antonio. And then you have the Clippers. You don't know what type of I mean, not Clippers, the Rockets. The Rockets simply don't have enough to add, okay? They don't have anything that anybody wants, okay? And they don't have draft picks. They mortgaged all their draft picks just to get Russell Westbrook. So the only thing I can see the Rockets doing with them letting go of Daryl Morey is possibly, starting all over. Now, Daryl Morey is not going to be unemployed much longer, okay? Depending on, and he probably might take a year off, maybe be an analyst for TNT or ESPN for a year or two, and then he's going to be a hot commodity at the end of next season. And then by that time, it will be running regular season, hopefully. And there's a lot of organizations that need a Daryl Morey, okay? Despite what he said about that controversy he had in China, he's a hot commodity, all right? I can see one of the teams I can really, really see is the Knicks or the 76ers, okay? So we're going to have to wait on Daryl Morey. But that's all I got for this video. I'll talk to you guys later. Deuces.